I started as a writer completely by accident. I was a television producer in Belfast, and I met an American, Judy. And, well, I know Cupid's arrow, hit. And Judy couldn't go and live in England or Ireland for family reasons. She had a big family over here, and I had no family to tie me down. So I said, well, don't worry, darling, I'll come to America. And I couldn't get a green card. I thought, what am I going to do? So I said, I'll write a book. And that's really what happened. So I started in New Jersey and you know, put the proverbial typewriter on the kitchen table and wrote the first of the Sharp books. We're still married. It's been 30 years now, more. Well, this is my office where I am merely pretending to work because normally I don't have a cameraman looking over my right shoulder. I'm terribly, terribly lucky. It's a wonderful space. It's a wonderful room. I filled it with history books. It's got swords from the Napoleonic period. Written a lot of books in here. I hope to write a lot more. This is an autograph of Edmund Burke, my hero. And this charming thing is a sword that was carried at Waterloo. In my Sharp books, Sharp carries a heavy cavalry sword. This is it. It's one of the worst swords ever made. It's incredibly ill-balanced. It really wasn't a very good sword at all, but a very strong man could do an awful lot of damage with this, and Sharp is a very strong man. This one was in battle. I know it was carried at Waterloo, and you can tell it was in action because they've sharpened the point. The original sword, the foreblade, which is the blade you cut with, went all the way back like that, and the back blade was straight, and that meant that it slid off Frenchman's ribs. It was no good at all. But there she is. I use it to cut long grass. Well, I'm always asked about how much research I do, and it's almost an impossible question to answer because research is actually a lifelong project. I mean, I write historical fiction because I used to read it. I mean, when I came to this daft decision and said to Judy, I'll write a book, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind what I was going to write. I was going to write historical fiction because that's what I like to read. But I'd also been reading history since I was a kid. And for some reason, I liked the Hornblower book, so I began to read the Napoleonic history. So by the time I wrote the first Sharp book, I had an awful lot of general knowledge. I mean, I was a bore. You know, I could tell you how many pounds of powder to put into a 12-pounder gun if you're going to fire it over 1,600. It's awful stuff. So I had a lot of background knowledge. It's also true of Azincourt. I've always been interested in the battle, in the medieval period. I've been reading about it for, gosh, 40 years. So is that research? I suppose it's research, but it doesn't feel like research. It feels like pleasure. Obviously, when it comes to the actual writing of it, you need to have a few very good sources. And I'll probably spend not as much time as I should doing sort of close research. You get bored with it. You want to start telling the story. Well, the myth of Azincourt is that it was the victory of the English archer, which it was, but it wasn't just the archer and his bow and his arrows. Let's not get too technical here, but the English longbow was a terrifying weapon. A good archer could fire 16, 17, 18 arrows in a minute, and they were accurate at least at 200 paces. I mean, this is far better than any musket of the Revolutionary War period or the Napoleonic Wars. This is very rapid fire. When the French were advancing at Azincourt, they were being hit by 1,000 arrows a second. I mean, you're not going to get that rate of fire till the invention of breech-loading guns or the machine gun. But they ran out of arrows very quickly. Why did the English win? I don't think it was the archers. There's always an arms race. I mean, you develop a better armor-piercing shell, I'll develop better armor, and so on. You sort of leapfrog your way. By the time of Azincourt, the French knew about English archers, and they knew how dangerous they were. So they'd improved their armor. They had a lot of them had, at least the richest guys, had Milanese armor, which was terrific. The armor was shaped so the arrow would glance off, and of course the arrows killed and wounded a lot of men. But the French still got there. They still got to the English line. It still came down to hand-to-hand fighting. But at that point, the archers had run out of arrows. So what do the archers do? They join the hand-to-hand fighting. I think the crucial thing about Azincourt was not the archers, it was mud. They fought on a field that had just been ploughed for winter wheat, and you plough deeper for winter wheat than you do in the spring. It had rained torrentially for some days, and the night before it just pelted down. It was soggy. Now imagine yourself with 60, 70 pounds of armor trying to walk through this mud. You couldn't ride. Horses were terribly vulnerable to arrows. You couldn't armor a horse against arrows. So they had to walk. And they're walking through thick mud that comes up to their knees. I mean, how tired they are. They have to have their visors down over their faces because otherwise the arrows will hit them. They can hardly breathe. They're encased in armor. They're wading through mud. By the time they hit the English line, they're just beat. And at that point, the English start killing them. I tend to read books that I can't possibly write. I mean, I love a good police procedural. I love good thrillers. Dennis Lehane, John Sandford, P.D. James, Stuart McClure. I love these guys. I think they're wonderful. I probably read more non-fiction. I still read vast amounts of history. But almost anything anything that takes my fancy, I'll read. I just finished a wonderful book about Shakespeare the lodger, when he lodged in the house of a Frenchman in Silver Street in London. Now, and I guess that's part of research. I mean, maybe one day, who knows? But I love history, but I guess mostly non-fiction. Well, I've sailed ever since I was a child. I grew up near the Thames Estuary, east of London, and it was just after the war. And I guess the fishermen there couldn't afford gasoline or something because they sailed. They were shrimp boats. I used to sail out on the tide, and I started doing that when I was about 7. And they hardly ever turned the motor on. It was all done by sail. They were red, tan sails, beautiful boats. And you sailed out, and you dragged your nets under sail, and you went back under sail. And the motor was ballast, and you only ever turned the engine on if you had to get back in time for something and there was no wind. So I've never known what it was not to be able to sail. And one of the reasons to come and live here in Cape Cod, in Chatham, was the sailing. And yes, it is a help when you're writing a naval battle or a naval story. But I've written two books which were set on board ships, and they're so difficult, they're impossible to write. I mean, my opinion of Patrick O'Brian, C.S. Forrester, Dudley Pope, Alexander, just shot up. I mean, the characters can never get away from each other. I mean, you're stuck on a small boat. I mean, at least if you're on land, they can go somewhere else. But it really makes plotting hell. So I don't think I'm going to write any more sailing books. Oh, for a muse of fire that might ascend the brightest heaven of invention, a kingdom for a stage, princes to act and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. Then might the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword, and war crouch for employment. But pardon, gentles all, the flat unraised spirit that have dared on this unworthy scaffold to bring forth so great an object. Can this cockpit hold the vasty fields of France, or may we cram within this wooden O the very casks that did affright the air at Azincourt?